If you were watching the Bucks-Jags game last Thursday night, somehow it was called Monday Night Football on Thursday night, and you hadn't already come to this realization that most of us have already and for quite a while, the reality probably smacked you across the face just how bad Blake Bortles is and how much this dude sucks ass. I mean, there is no other way to spin this. The dude is awful. He is terrible. You looked at him in that game on Thursday night, and you thought this was a kid that was maybe a 6th or 7th round pick that was struggling to make the roster. Not somebody who this organization, the Jaguars, massively reached on at number 3 overall in the 2014 draft. For Christ's sakes, we're now getting into year number 4, and not only has Blake Bortles not improved, not progressed, you could very easily make the argument that he has regressed, which is evident by the fact I believe he's thrown for as many pick sixes as his team has had wins with him as a starting quarterback over the previous 3 seasons. I mean, my God. You want to talk about epic bad bust. And I know you're going to have some that are going to sit there and say, well, he didn't have a lot of help around him. His offensive line wasn't good. He put up some decent numbers. He put up some decent numbers at times in small stretches because his team had to throw every down because he was so terrible early in the games when it freaking mattered. And usually, pick 6. This dude is doo-doo. I'm going to emphasize doo-doo. And when head coach Doug Marrone talks about he's not sure about who he has as a starting quarterback, I can tell you this much. Chad Henne is no saint. Chad Henne is no savior. And you really don't want to have him being your starting quarterback at this particular time if you can help it. But I don't see how a guy like Doug Marrone can go to the rest of that Jaguars roster, to that locker room, and legitimately stay with a straight face that he feels Blake Bortles gives them the best chance to win football games. How could you do that and have any credibility in your locker room at all? How can you sit there and continue to trot out Blake Bortles as your starting quarterback and not expect to lose that locker room and lose it rapidly? I mean, it's just awful. This dude sucks. You know, not everybody's going to be a superstar. I get it. But from the outside looking in, it looks like this dude doesn't care, and it most certainly looks like this dude hasn't worked at all to improve whatsoever. The physical elements of the game, the mental elements of the game, the leadership elements of the game, he's done nothing. And this is not just a simple overreaction to what happened last Thursday night. This has been a long building theme and narrative about just how bad Blake Bortles is. And I think the Jaguars, the ultimate question for them at this point in time as an organization is not if Blake Bortles should be their starter opening week, because I think absolutely not. You get to the point of when you start to explore the option of, is it better to release Blake Bortles? Because there is something to be said about addition by subtraction. And even though Chad Henne is not going to be better, and in theory might even be a little bit worse, Chad Henne also wasn't the number 3 overall pick in the 2014 draft. And if you want to send a message to a locker room, and a big message and a strong message, what stronger message could you send than nobody is above the law, nobody is untouchable? Look, we just cut the freaking young alleged franchise quarterback because he couldn't cut the mustard. To me, it could be one of those situations where the team would really benefit from a statement move, even though it means you would be surrendering millions in cap space this year to a guy that wasn't even on the roster. It would leave you in a hole in terms of who you're going to have back up. Chad Henne. You get to a point, though, where you have to start exploring the option, because to me, if Blake Bortles did anything decent in the regular season, literally nobody could say they saw it coming. That's how unlikely it is. That's how unrealistic it is at this point in time. Or you would have to get to a point where you would turn him into such a game manager that you might as well as have Chad Henne do it, because he's better suited to play that game manager type of role any damn ways. I mean, Bortles is just god-awful. And to me, the question isn't should they start him. The question is, should they cut him? Which brings me to the bigger question. Blake Bortles clearly has been a failure. There's no way he could be viewed as a success. When does David Caldwell get fired now? Because this is the guy that was so giggly tits about Bortles that he knew he didn't have to, but he did it anyways. It took him 3rd overall in 2014, which in and of itself was bad, but especially in a draft where Derek Carr was taken by the Raiders in round number 2, it looks that much worse. The Raiders have their young franchise quarterback, a future superstar, a guy that could potentially take him to the Super Bowl soon, and the Jaguars are still picking in the top 5 because they wasted the 3rd overall pick on Blake fucking Bortles. And even though you could make an argument that Caldwell's done a decent job in certain areas and certain places in the draft, at some point in time you'd hope a guy would be able to fucking figure it out when you're picking in the top 5 every goddamn year. But the one pick that matters, the one pick that you absolutely had to get right, he got a resounding F-bomb on. And if that's how we measure head coaches and general managers, and we do with the starting quarterback, you already had a head coach get fired because of the failings of that starting quarterback with Gus Bradley being shown the door. You just hired Doug Marrone, so you can't just immediately fire him. Then you have to make somebody else accountable because it's not okay and it's not acceptable. Tom Coughlin, whoever the hell it is, whether even if it's Khan, the owner, somebody has to make the call and say, you set our organization back years by being a dipshit and falling in love with a mediocre prospect and taking him number 3 overall in Blake Bortles. To me, David Caldwell should be immediately fired because I don't care what you could say about the other roster. The one position that matters above all the rest, he fucked up. He fucked up. And even with some of the young talent that they have on both sides of the ball, doesn't matter with the quarterback situation in Jacksonville being the mess that it is. No. And that is solely the responsibility of the general manager. So to me, for the Jaguars, if you're Tom Coughlin, if you're the owner Khan, and you want to send a message, you want to change the culture, to me, you have to entertain the thought of cutting Blake Bortles, and you most certainly immediately need to fire your general manager, David Caldwell. Because you cannot allow that to go unchecked. You screwed up horribly. And he should have to pay the price for it. Because he even said himself that if Blake Bortles didn't work out, he should lose his job. Well, David Caldwell, newsflash, Blake Bortles didn't work out, you fucked up, and now it's time for the Jaguars organization to show you the damn door.